Gonstead Chiropractic. That's kind of my version. So why don't we start with your version?
Hey, hello, I'm Dr. Doug Valentine. I'm a retired chiropractor who practiced for approximately 45 years, mostly in Iowa. Did have a little stint in Lake Tahoe for 2 years and Florida for 2 years. And I came back to my state that I liked the best, which was Iowa. And I'm enjoying retirement at this point. And I studied personally under Dr. Gonstead for 12 years, which is why I give him all the credit to my success in life. More important than the 7 years of college I had.
Say that again. More. Say that again.
Okay, I studied under Dr. Gonstead for 12 years before he passed away, plus I was a patient of his. And my success that I've had in practice, which was really great, I give totally the credit to Dr. Gonstead and his technique that he taught me, more so than the 7 years of college I had to get here.
How does that even work? How does that make sense?
Well, what I'm saying is my 7 years I had at college education really didn't affect my practice as much as what Dr. Gonstead taught me. And one of the biggest things I found with Dr. Gonstead was, as a patient of his for 12 years, I knew his touch. I knew how fast he ran the nervous code up and down the spine. I knew his feel when he would touch you to adjust you. There wasn't a lot of tightness there. It was just the smoothest, most incredible feeling in the world. And I set my goal when I got in practice, even though I was very weak at the beginning, to mimic Gonstead as much as I could. And that's why I feel that he was probably the most important influence I ever had in my life in regards to practice of chiropractic.
And how many years did you say you practiced?
45.
So for someone like yourself who's years retired, 45 years practicing, and actually had adjustments from Dr. Gonstead, you've got a pretty good wealth of experience, both receiving and giving. So in particular to receiving adjustment from Dr. Gonstead, which is something not many people can say, now knowing what you know with the experience you have behind you, what makes that Gonstead touch so special?
Well, he was a unique man in the sense that every adjustment he gave excited him. And to give you an example on how excited he got, years ago, probably 30 or more, when he was on 60 Minutes on national TV for a week, they had him and some other people on there. And when they were filming this down here at the clinic, the first time he actually saw himself give an adjustment to a patient, and he heard that clunk that he always talked about, his eyes got big as a dish. That man loved every single adjustment. Another thing that proves that point is you might be seeing him as a patient at 1 o'clock in the morning, which after maybe 200 patients. He had to have been tired, fatigued. And he'd run the scope down, he'd look at the x-ray, palpate it, and he'd sit there and think, there's something not right. Now, most people would just say, I'll give them an adjustment, we'll see how they feel next time. Not Gonstead. He'd send them in for an x-ray, analyze the x-ray, and even make them later getting home. But that's what he loved. Every single adjustment had to be perfect. And one thing he always told us students, he says, use boys just too hard, too often, in too many places. And that's true. And he spoke broken English, but the guy was just amazing with the dedication he had. I mean, he would work up to 20 hours a day, 6.5 days a week. Sunday morning, he'd work another half day, and then Sunday afternoon, his wife would drive him around to people that were bedridden that couldn't get to the clinic. And it was just amazing. He loved it that much. Didn't particularly care about money. It's just that he loved chiropractic and doing it perfect.
Would you say, or is it fair to say that he was obsessive?
I'd say obsessive compulsive with chiropractic, yes. And he wanted us students to learn. In fact, another point which shows how great he was is that he never intended to teach chiropractic. He had this phenomenal practice. The profession came to his doorstep and they begged him to teach them. what he was doing. That's how it all started. And of course, my class was the first student class came up because one of the doctors that worked with him over the years was Dr. Doug Cox. He was one of my instructors down at Palmer. And Doug Cox kept telling us about this little old Norwegian guy up in Wisconsin who was getting amazing results. And so we decided, well, let's go on up there. Because when I got into chiropractic myself, I had suffered for my entire years in high school of severe back pain. My parents sent me to 3 top medical specialists because they didn't know anything about chiropractic, nor did I. The first specialist gave me narcotic drugs, which just covered the symptom up and basically I got worse. The second doctor, top specialist in New Jersey, gave me these huge shots on my arm that the fluid ran through my system and tasted terrible. It could affect the vision. I had no pain at all. Next morning I wake up with like boils over my body. Third specialist wanted to do exploratory back surgery. And I'm like 15 years old. It's already ruined my high school sports. And I want nothing to do with that. So I was sitting there depressed, and a neighbor came over and says, "Why don't you go see my chiropractor?" And he says, "What's a chiropractor?" At that point, I didn't care if it was a witch doctor. So I went to this guy, and he took this full spine x-ray like Gonstead did, and he ran an instrument down my back, showed me the problem. 2 weeks later, I'm pain-free. I thought, wow, that's amazing, because my parents spent about $2,000 back in the 50s and early 60s, which is probably $20,000, $30,000 today. And I was getting worse. But with chiropractic, it fixed me up. So I was so impressed that I went back once a month just to keep feeling great. And the one thing I never told this chiropractor was that I had been crippled with severe migraine headaches since I was born. And I feel what caused it was I was a breech delivery. They turned me around inside my mother's womb, delivered me, and I think they messed my neck up because I had a very sick childhood. And these migraines would put me in a dark room for 2-3 days, nauseous, wanting to throw up, terrible pain. And after a year of going to this chiropractor, I woke up one day and says, I never had a migraine that year. Never had one since. Never told a chiropractor I had migraines. That's how great chiropractic is. So when I came to the clinic here, I thought this was for backaches and headaches, and that's it. And I come up here and I see this incredible clinic, and this guy's treating diabetics, cerebral palsy, fractured cervical spines, unbelievable conditions that he's treating and getting results. Because I remember they brought a farmer in from a field here locally that was in a diabetic coma. Gonstead had a blood lab here. So he took a blood test, adjusted him twice a day for 3 days, and at the end of 3 days, this guy came out of the coma without ever putting insulin in him. That's impressive. And this is the kind of stuff. And how many major C5, C6 fractures that cause quadriplegia he treated? Within 3-4 days, he'd have him walking again. I mean, and this is what amazed me about Gonstead and modern medicine. And this actually made me lose a lot of respect for modern medicine, because when you fracture C5, C6, the vertebrae is just pushed backwards and inferior. And it presses against the cord swells up, and you're paralyzed from that point down. He just simply set it back up, and after about 6 adjustments over 3 days, swelling goes down, patient walks. He'd send him to Madison, Wisconsin to get a neck brace put on for 4 to 6 weeks. Then, in the 70s, they had a team of orthopedic surgeons came out to the clinic here because they were amazed how they got these quadriplegics coming in. They were walking. And he showed them. It's simple. It's just a simple thing. You push the vertebra back, and they walk again. Okay, to this day, if you fracture your spine, they're going to take you to the hospital, they're going to run you upstairs, and they're going to fuse your neck with that vertebra jammed against the cord still, so you're paralyzed for life. Does that make sense? It's the same thing as like Harrington rods, those big rods they put in people with these severe scoliosis. That's the worst thing you can do to a spine. That spine is stronger than a patient with a straight spine. And I found out a lot of that from Gonstead, but I also found out that I'd have patients come in 85 years old, take an x-ray, and here's a severe scoliosis. Never had a problem. But see, they tell parents of children with these severe scoliosis, their teen years, oh, they're going to grow older and they're going to bend forward and it's going to crush them and it's going to kill them. Big lie. So I've lost a lot of respect for modern medicine because of that.
What other big lies, red flags, do you see right now?
In modern medicine? Well, when I started practice, my first year in practice, I had a whiplash patient come in. And of course, Gonstead was fantastic on whiplash because the neck curve gets reversed and we could actually reestablish that curve for the patient. So this patient comes in and I fixed her all up, took a post x-ray, actually reestablished the curve, her pain was gone. And the insurance company only offered her a few $100s. And she was upset. And I says, well, you could go down and see my lawyer if you want and see what he says about it. So she went down to him. So he files a lawsuit. And you got to understand it. When I was at Palmer, and even before, I was very shy, very bashful. Nobody believes it anymore because of the way I am, but I was at one time. So he gets a court date set up. And he says, Doc, I want you to come testify. And he says, okay. And I was petrified. Going to court, speaking in front of the public. And I said, okay. The night before, I don't think I slept a wink. My knees were knocking. I was scared to death. My heart was beating. But I took in the Gonstead chart that he developed, and I went on a blackboard, and I just told the jury, I basically gave them a lay patient lecture. Told them how the vertebra gets knocked out and so forth. And they, of course, every case I had, they brought an orthopedic surgeon in who said that I was not qualified to say that, and I was wrong. Well, this patient only wanted about $1,000. She got $7,500. As a result of that huge settlement back in the 70s, tons and tons of lawyers sent me patients. And I was going to court all the time. And I even got to the point almost being a little arrogant at some time because I was called a quack by the orthopedic surgeons back then because we were not licensed in every state, nor would insurance companies pay us. Never lost a case to an orthopedic surgeon, ever. And the reason is orthopedics can't fix a whiplash. They can give you drugs to cover up the symptoms, and then 20 years later you've lost a disc because it was never corrected properly. Now, another interesting fact happened was that we had one case where there was 4 patients in the family got rear-ended. I treated all 4 of them for whiplash. They got an attorney, and the attorney ended up, after the court case, getting $50,000. Well, the law firm that lost decides that they're going to appeal this to the Supreme Court of Iowa, based on the fact that, number one, chiropractors were not qualified as expert witnesses to testify against an orthopedic specialist. However, the orthopedic testified on Tuesday, came back in again on Thursday on rebuttal after I had testified on Wednesday. And he completely contradicted himself. So the Supreme Court looks at this case, goes through it, tears this orthopedic up one side, down the other side, and just praises me. Because number one, I had a DC degree, plus I had a PhD degree, which very few people have. And that set the precedence in the Supreme Court of Iowa, which to this day, chiropractors are now expert witnesses. All based on the Gonstead disc concept that he taught us. Now, a lot of chiropractors get involved with these orthopedic and neurological tests and all that stuff, which I know are not necessary. Because if you try to learn all these orthopedic and neurological tests, which don't even really work half the time, the law firm can study this stuff and can really drill you on a witness stand. Well, I didn't want to be drilled, so I never used any of that stuff. And so they never could drill me or stop me because they knew nothing about the Gonstead technique at all. I also used the same procedure when I testified in many cases where chiropractors got sued for malpractice. And most of them were Gonstead doctors. We also never lost one of those cases either. So the disc concept is simple. The technique is excellent. it's probably the hardest technique to learn. It took me a lifetime to learn it, and Gonstead took a lot to the grave with him. And then I continued to study under Dr. Alex Cox, who was one of his right-hand men. And I think Alex, when he goes, there'll be a lot taken away too. But I'm afraid that this younger generation, they're, I don't know, might be getting misled to some degree. They need to learn exactly what Gonstead did. And this is why I succeeded so well, because I was bound and determined. I mean, I was so bad my first year in practice, I even sprained my hand here doing the cervical chair because I was doing it wrong. And all of a sudden one day, after a year or two, the vertebrae started moving better and better and better. And then I remember one day, this gal come in about 5 o'clock on a Friday, and I, of course, took the weekend off, bent over in half, crying in severe pain, took an x-ray, her lumbar curve was completely reversed. One of the worst spasms you ever want to see. But I remember in this clinic watching Dr. Gonstead showing an x-ray of a patient just like that, adjusted him, they came in the next day standing straight, took an x-ray, you wouldn't know it was the same patient. Everything came back to normal, no pain. I set that fifth lumbar, and she came back in Monday, pain-free, perfectly normal spine. And I thought, man, Gonstead was right. And that's what I love about it, because, yeah, he was a magician. He did think in depth, where a lot of chiropractors don't. But I always try to keep my mind going or thinking the way he did. And the technique is repeatable. A lot of people give up because it is more difficult and they think it's not repeatable, but no, it is repeatable, definitely.
So what is your response to, or I guess words like magic, miracle, these are words people use to describe, their relief from whatever problems they have. Or, you hear a lot of anecdotal evidence, my friend, me, whatever, and you hear these like success stories. Why is it that it's put on that kind of that level of magic and miracle? Why is it not just everyday normal health?
Well, I guess because when you get a patient that has severe diabetes, and this little Norwegian guy comes along, takes an x-ray, and fixes that T7 in their back, and all of a sudden their blood sugar's normal. See, when I went out to Lake Tahoe for 2 years, I had set up a practice system. I always wanted to do pre and post x-rays, pre and post blood tests as well, and then I put them on a nutritional base program. And because Gonstead could do that here at the clinic, and I couldn't do it in Iowa. So out there in Nevada, I did. And I was amazed how the body chemistry changed. And what's amazing about it is that as a chiropractor, all you really have to think about is finding that subluxation and then knowing exactly how to fix it. But more important than anything, knowing when to leave it alone. This is why it's on his tombstone. Find it, fix it, leave it alone. And that leave it alone is the single hardest thing for doctors to learn. Because we have this tendency, it's a lot better, but until a little break there, we adjust it, and all of a sudden, it flares up again. And then you say to yourself, I knew better than that, but I did it. And then you have some excuse about, what is the term, retracing? And so I think people call it a miracle because people can't picture a pinched nerve causing diabetes, or a pinched spinal cord causing quadriplegia, or a dislocated condyle causing cerebral palsy, you see? But if you understand the Gonstead technique and how these things happen because of the spinal mechanics, then it's not really a miracle to me anymore. But when I first came up here and I saw this clinic and found out what this guy did, I thought, wow, this guy must be a magician. But then I learned that I can repeat what he did. And that's what really excites the heck out of me. And that's why when I quit practice, retired at age 70, I really kind of felt guilty for a year because I, missed those patients. I didn't miss insurance papers or all that junk and filling out reports, but I missed patients. And I still actually do have patients come to my condo and get adjusted because they think I walk on water, they still want to come to me. So, but to the lay patient, I say, yeah, they probably think it is a miracle, but it's not. It's just, it's more like common sense, just like the quadriplegic with the neck problem. That's just common sense. The vertebra's out, hits the cord, makes it swell up, paralyze you, push it back, swelling goes down, they walk again. That's pretty simple.
I guess I'm just like, how is it that something like you just explained, like the last 10 seconds you just said,
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure you're not the only one saying it. I'm sure there's a lot of people who can testify to that. So why is it still not in the public conscious?
I think chiropractors are probably the worst people for explaining to patients the benefits of chiropractic. I really do. One of the biggest benefits that I've never heard chiropractors talk about, even to this day, is that if you want to die with your adult teeth, you go to dentist, dental floss, brush your teeth, get checked, right? Well, if you look at a spine, like myself, I've been adjusted for over 60 years now. I'll be 78 in October. I have disc spaces that thick. Most people my age have disc spaces like this. Chiropractic preserves the spine. And everybody in this society is brainwashed. If you have a symptom, then you go to a doctor. So I ask people, if you get a rod knock in your engine, do you go to a mechanic? Most people take better care of their vehicle than they do their body. To me, you have to listen to your body every single day. That's why at almost 70, I don't take any medication. I'm healthy as a horse. I'm still climbing trees, shooting deer with bow and arrow. And this is the way life should be. But I've been adjusted at least once or twice a month my entire life. Not that I was hurting at the time, but I used to tell patients, if you wait till you have a cavity where you get a symptom, you're losing a tooth. So when patients wait before they get an adjustment or they get a pain and don't do anything about it, then it's going to get degenerated. Or if you come in and get adjustment and the doctor says, well, you might need 6 or 8 adjustments to get this fixed, and they get 1 or 2 and feel great and they leave. You haven't got the message over to them. You see?
So, like, because to be specific, when you're talking about diabetes, I think of my childhood friend, and I didn't, as a child, you're like, why do you have to poke your finger every day? Like, I see you do that a lot, and, you carry these needles, and you gotta inject your thigh. What do you, what's going on? Oh, I got diabetes. So, like, to me, growing up, if you have diabetes, you need to poke your finger, and you have to take a shot in your leg, or you have to give yourself a shot in your leg. So what has to happen so that a kid today with a friend with diabetes, like, you have diabetes? That means your disc just needs to go this way, and you have to make the swelling go down.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what needs to happen for that change?
I think it's totally educational. The fact that we got to show people that a simple pinched nerve can shut the pancreas down. I had a patient at Lake Tahoe came in, blood sugar was almost 600, didn't even know it. I got him back to normal in 6 weeks just by adjusting his spine. And I think the concept, people seem to think that when you have something wrong, it really has to be something important, like you need surgery or you need drugs or you need both. And they're wrong. And I think a lot of this stuff is because Big Pharma, for decades, has fought chiropractic tooth and nail. And of course, a lot of this stems from the Rothschilds and Rockefellers families who own all this. And they never wanted natural health care to come in the United States. They still try to stop it all the time. Just like chiropractors are constantly, put like second-class citizens. Well, we can prove they're wrong because of fact, but we have to educate the public to it. And sometimes the problem is you get so busy in practice, like I used to see 50, 60. I think at my peak I would see 100 patients a day. You don't have the time to really sit down and educate the patient like they should be. Now, Frank Young from California was a great big Gonstead practitioner years ago. And he was pretty amazing. He would give a lay patient lecture that really, and they educated the patient. They all had to go to it. And then, but when he was in the adjusting room working on them, they couldn't talk. but he educated them inside out and built this huge practice out there. That's what needs to be done. But there's still this disbelief in this country that you have to have a drug to keep going. And it's insane. Just like I have patients, a lot of patients come in and they're 85, 88 years old, and their blood pressure is maybe 160 over 90. And the MD sees that. He puts them on a blood pressure medication to drop their blood pressure back to what they think should be 120 over 80, which is totally incorrect. So then the patient goes into dementia. And the reason is the human body is the greatest self-healing mechanism ever developed. So when we get old and our vessels are calcified and they don't expand like they used to, you don't get enough circulation in the brain, the innate intelligence or the intelligence of the body automatically increases blood pressure on purpose. And so if the MD brings it down and you go into dementia, does that make sense? No. You see? It's just education. It's hard to tell people that, it's just like in a house. If a circuit breaker blows, wherever that line goes to, there's no electricity. Subluxation is the exact same thing. That nerve gets pinched, no function.
So you're saying it's communication, it's education, and maybe even opposition from people who will benefit from the suppression of this kind of knowledge.
Yes.
But that's a picture that you painted in this country. What about other places in the world who adopt, and you grow up with a more holistic view or a wholesome type of systematic view of the body instead of just reactive and take this drug, shut up type of?
Well, I went down to Cancun one time, and we were in this restaurant bar, and this one waiter found out I was a chiropractor. And the people down there, this guy comes knocking on my door. I want to get adjusted. They worship chiropractors. I could not believe it. I mean, these guys were chasing me around the place. I said, well, I don't have any extra. I shouldn't be doing this down here. But there's a country where they believe in. Now, I think it's Sweden or Norway, one of the two. It might be Norway. Yeah, I think it's Norway, where they have socialized medicine. Any person with back pain can go to a hospital and get all kinds of drugs and therapy and all that stuff free. But the chiropractors in Norway, from what I understand, have a waiting list of 6 months to get in to see them, and they charge for what the people think they get free in the hospital, and they're that busy because the country knows. Our country is just not educated. And when you have a media like we got today, you can very easily see why chiropractic is not being blasted from the tallest towers, that it works.
So you think that, let's just say, like, best case scenario for everything that we're doing here today with the group we have here today, this work gets out, turns out to be on Netflix, Amazon Prime, Hulu, all this stuff, HBO, and what do you think would be the best case scenario? Would we then see an influx of students going to chiropractic care? Will we see then less people relying on medicine? Like, paint that picture for me, that kind of happy ending, that with communication, with education, how can America, the United States of America, be in, say, I don't know, after this information communication is out there?
Well, to me today, it's almost impossible with the media we got, because the media doesn't believe in the truth anymore. So just like Gonstead built this worldwide practice by word of mouth, that's amazing right there. And so what I would tell a lot of students today, because there's so many will get into Gonstead work and they get in practice and they quit. And I struggled the first year. I'll admit that. I actually struggled. But I would not give up because I wanted to be like Gonstead. And I worked at it and I worked at it, and all of a sudden one day, it's amazing how it worked. How is it ever hard? It's simple. And I just love the results you get with it. So I don't know how you can ever change that. Now, Palmer had some advantage with the fact he owns those radio stations. They used to blast it all around there, which probably helped a lot too. And even the Mayo Clinic brothers that started that big clinic up there, my understanding is both of them had wives that had health problems they couldn't fix, and Palmer fixed one, and BJ, and then Dr. Gonstead fixed the other one. And stuff like this needs to happen. But I mean, I've been frustrated. Like I had a little baby come in one time and it had failure to thrive. That's right. It's the next stage. The next stage after that would be cerebral palsy, and she had a condyle problem. And she'd been going to this obstetrician or pediatrician for over a year, giving drugs, trying this, and the child's getting worse. So I spent a whole hour one day showing in our textbooks what Gonstead did with this, and that you need to set that condyle. Spent a whole hour, and they still wouldn't let me adjust the baby. And I finally wrote them a letter, and it was firm. I said, do not come back to this office. If you're going to do that to your child, then at least have the courtesy to go up to the Gonstead clinic and get that child some help. Because it just irritated me. I mean, it's like you want to just slap them alongside the head and say, wake up. It's simple mechanics. And I guarantee you, after testifying in court for 45 years, orthopedics know absolutely nothing about spinal biomechanics. They don't know why we even have gravity, I don't think. I mean, sure, we lived in the moon, we might not have spinal problems. But on planet Earth, we got gravity. And that's why we have spinal problems. And all the MD does, he treats the symptom. And they're great for getting rid of symptoms with drugs. I mean, they got drugs now, you can put you in la-la land, you just float around every day like nothing's going on while your body just rots away. It's insane.
Is this frustration that you have the reason you retired, or is it?
No, I actually loved practice. I retired because I cut my practice down to like a day and a half, and all of a sudden every patient that came in for the entire week wanted to come in for those little hours. And at 70 years old, seeing 50, 60 patients, I go home at night, my back hurt, I was tired, I was shot. I told the wife, I can't handle this anymore. I mean, chiropractic's not easy work. And so I retired, and like I say, I still have patients come over to see me in my condo, which I love. And
So I just have a couple more, but before that, if Dr. Scott, want to chime in.
You got the 12 years, the actual face-to-face, being a patient, learning from him. Kind of share with us a little bit more, like, inside scoop, so to speak, or like, his personality.
Mm-hmm.
You already mentioned about, like, this guy like work crazy hours or those things, but maybe share with the, like, maybe so question number one is like some inside scoop. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Then another one is like, I really wanna, I as a student of Gonstead Chiropractic, I wanna kind of experience how he did it. Maybe explain to me like, hey, he scooped like this way, he touched like this way. When we received the low back area, I still remember the day like he was actually hitting on the mat like S3 or whatever case is. Then he come like that one. Can you kind of paint a picture for the number two? So number one is the inside scoop. Mm-hmm. Then number two is the how he evaluate the Gonstead system. Then how he deliver. I really wanna, because you are one of the few receive.
Yeah, first time I had adjusted, I was just amazed. I mean, the guy's touch, I see some students adjusting and they have the set thing, contact pack, point, tissue pull, all this stuff, and they're tense and they're pushing hard. Well, the patient's going to resist that. Gonstead would just have this light touch. Of course, ran the scope nice and slow, would palpate all the way down, palpate all the way up. And that's what I think students, when they get into Palmer, from the first day they get there, they should palpate the spine down and up every single day. And they'd be a lot better by the time they graduate. But his touch was so light, but yet when he'd come in with that light touch, when that thrust came in there, you'd swear that vertebra was coming out the other side of your neck. I mean, it was just amazing. And he was just tireless in it. I've had days when I got really tired and stuff, and I know there was times I gave sloppy techniques. And Gonstead told me that as a student. Never give an indifferent adjustment, okay? That was the first question. Now, second question, what was that about?
Like, I wanted to, like, can you paint, so he did it. Oh, no, that was the second question.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was the second question.
What was the first question?
Is kind of like, hanging out with him, learning from him? Like, what is the inside scoop, or what does he kind of like? Oh, this is like the one point he was like doing this, or whatever the.
He had a good sense of humor, and I used to. When we were down clinic, he used to adjust everybody all the time, and I'd stand there and hold a card for him, and I'd watch how he'd scope and stuff, watch how he palpate and stuff, and he'd joke around a lot, and I'd ask him questions here and there. And in fact, the very last time I ever saw him alive, he was in the last office when he first came in that door. Came up, he adjusted me, and I had my picture taken with him. And I had a bad T10, which is a PRIT, and he put me in the knee chest, and he reached across and used his inferior hand and said that. And I said, Dr. G, you never taught that to us before. You said we had to be on that side. Oh, I have some tricks up my sleeve. And then one night, they always had a cocktail hour on Saturday night down at the Caracol years ago. And one night, a bunch of us students were sitting there talking to him, and he's drinking Manhattans. So we got him about 6 Manhattans, and those are a potent drink. And he was just giggling away, having a gay old time, And he was just a down-to-earth guy. He loved people, he loved chiropractic, and he loved students. And he wanted us all to be the best of the best. But I suppose it'd be his devotion. I can imagine when he first got adjusted himself, he must have had this brilliant experience to make this guy accomplish what he did. I mean, it's amazing what this guy did. And so, like I say, the biggest reason I was so successful is because of what this man taught me. He was my friend, my mentor, and he's an incredible human being.
All right.
Now, another thing that I did do, when I graduated, I had a classmate of mine, Dr. Wendell Ball. Him and I both didn't have plans to go into practice right away. We were still taking boards. And so we found out that Palmer had this PhD program, Philosopher Chiropractic. And up until that point, nobody had ever stayed at the college. They were given to doctors that had done lots of research in the field. So Wendell Ball and I decided, well, let's do a research on Gonstead's work. And what we did is when the incoming student class came in, every single one of them, we x-rayed them all with a full spine x-ray. And then we scoped them all and kept all these records separate. And then later on, we put all this material together to see how our findings on a nerve scope would correlate with what we thought would be the subluxation on the x-ray. And we ran into some problem with it because Dr. Hillbrand at Palmer College at the time did not like full spine x-rays, and so he did not like Dr. Gonstead, and of course that's all we took was full spine x-rays. So we won the battle with him. But when we put all the material together after a year, we ended up with 94% accuracy. And that amazed me because I sat there and thought, both Dr. Wendell and myself, we were not that experienced at all. We'd never even been in private practice. And if Dr. Gonstead had done this, I know it would have been 100%. But for that research, we got to use a PhD degree, which I have very successfully utilized in practice with court work and stuff. But chiropractic is the most incredible profession in the world because it taps into the body's natural ability to heal. Just like, this COVID baloney we have today. I never in my wildest dreams thought the media could snow the whole entire world. I knew Adolf Hitler came to Germany and did it quite well. But now they're doing it everywhere. And it's insanity to me because I know for a fact you get adjusted once a month your entire life, your immune system is twice as strong as a person who's not getting adjusted. Guarantee it. And so we're the best healthcare for healthcare period. It's chiropractic, getting regular adjustments and keeping that immune system at a higher level. But unfortunately, in this society today, everything is based on money. And like I would tell students, if you go into practice and your goal is to make a lot of money, forget it. But if your goal is to go and practice and become the best Gonstead chiropractor you can be, you'll have more money than you'll ever need to have, or you ever want or thought you would have. Yes.
Did Gonstead ever have any like rules to live by? Like, maybe not so much like even like patient care related. Like, did he have any? Maybe just like outside of the office or.
Well, I understand that some of the funny things about Gonstead is that he hated income tax. And the story was that he'd go home at night with a barrel of cash, he'd throw it up in the air, whatever stuck to the ceiling he'd pay to the government. Well, when he was in practice downtown there, the IRS came in one day, sat outside his office, counted the number of patients, came in and confiscated the garbage pails and the number of papers rolled up, and figured out how much he would owe. So he was the first clinic ever in Wisconsin to have a cash register put in the office there. That's one thing I got a kick out of. Another thing is he had an airplane and he would fly. He also had a private pilot fly for him, but he flew and never had a pilot's license. And one time there was a story that he had fallen asleep and the pilot had gotten lost, and he woke Gonstead up, and I guess Gonstead just took over and took it right on down, found out where they're at. Yeah, he was just an amazing guy. Yeah, and he was fun to be around. He used to joke. He used to give us some swear words in Norwegian, which I forget. But he was about as down to earth as you can get. Wasn't arrogant. He did some extravagant things, like bought one of Elvis Presley's cars that Elvis had ordered it, but decided not to take. So Gonstead bought it, and he did a lot for this community. I remember when they first broke ground out here, the city council decided to incorporate this land in so they would get more income tax because they knew how busy this guy was. They didn't even want him downtown because the traffic got so bad because people coming to see him. So when he broke ground here, they went and said, well, we want this guy's tax dollar. So they incorporated it. He went down to the city council and says, you either keep my tax at this level of what it was at, or I'm donating this whole clinic and everything to Palmer College Chiropractic and you won't get a dime. And he made him back down. But he was just, like I say, an amazing, amazing guy. Yep.
Well, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
You betcha.
Doug.
Thank you.
You bet. You're welcome.
Personal stories.
Yeah, personal story to the income tax.
I know, right?
Yeah. Whatever.